Hello, this is Science Trainer, and it's been a while. Life is busy, having a baby is busy, but there are some things that I want to talk about. And one of the things that I've done recently is try to buy a car. And I've bought the car, but I made some mistakes. Don't make my mistakes. Let's get started. Buying a car is pretty simple in America. You go to the dealer, you test drive, you sign some paperwork, and you walk out with the car. And there's surprisingly few barriers to make sure you don't make a mistake or you don't do something that you regret. And while you can just walk in and pick up a car, don't do it. Be smart about it so you get a good deal and you get something that's good for you. And so this video is about avoiding the mistakes that I made and also about planning ahead, take some offense so that you can the product that you want. Mistake number one that I made was I just ran into the dealer markups right away. And so the fun thing about dealer markups is that the MSRP of the vehicle is online. It's readily available. Most of the major car companies will list their MSRPs for the different cars, and you can just, what they are. It's 40,000, 45,000, 50,000, whatever. But the dealers can charge a different price. So some of them will charge discounts, some of them will charge the fair price, and some of them will charge a premium. And me, being a total dummy, I went to the dealer that did have the car that I wanted, but it was at a premium, and it was even listed on the website where it was like VIP package, an extra $3,000. What a dummy. Just on the website alone, do look at your vehicle and do realize ahead of time, are you going into a discount, or are you going to pay the fair price, or are you going to start at a markup? One of the ways that dealers try to get you is with these like VIP packages or these like service packages where you get some added extra crap to your purchase. These are the ways that the dealers make extra money. So the way that the dealers buy their cars is actually not that far away from MSRP. So usually they're not making 10, 20K on a car. It might be one or two. And so in order for them to make more profit from the same vehicle, they'll try to sell you extra things where they have a considerable profit margin. And so that will be where these VIPs or service packages come from, or these extra items or kind of bulk that goes with your car. And so one of them will be like this permaplate, where they spray your car so that it like resists damage a little bit more. I found this to be pretty garbagey. I didn't like it. And on top of that, when I asked about like the forever chemicals and like these, PFOAs that are rubbing off on your skin or whatever, they had no idea what they were talking about. So research ahead of time. Probably you're not going to want these things. And so if you don't want them, try to not get them. The other thing that you have to think about is the contract step. And so once you pick the car, you're like, I want this car, and you agree, you negotiate with the dealer on a price, that you go to financing, and then financing will try to give you these extra things as well. And so usually it'll be like $50, $100, $150 extra on your monthly finance payment for these random service packages. And I'm just going to say that you probably aren't going to need them. If you do the math, most of the time, this is another way for the dealer to make money off of their sale. So that was one of the mistakes that I was thankfully able to avoid. They offered me these packages and I'm like, no, I don't want them. And then they were like, okay, whatever, fine. But the mistake that I made was I didn't print my contract. And so after all this negotiation with the finance team, it's like, okay, fine, you're gonna pay X per month. And I looked at the price and I thought it was a good interest rate, and I'm like, okay, fine, I'm gonna pay X a month. And then when I get my bill, it's X plus 20. And I'm like, where did this extra $20 come from? And so I called the dealer, and then they were like, oh, you have to call the finance company, you have to call a dealer. So there's a lot of back and forth. And so I'm like, just send me the contract. What did I sign? And wouldn't you know it, but it was X plus 20. Somehow, between the time when I signed the paper in the office to me getting my bill, I was paying an extra $20 a month for years. And what can I do about it? I had the contract with the higher number. I'm pretty sure I got bamboozled. In this situation, I would just not walk away without a printed contract, so at least you know the same day what are you going to be paying monthly. Another huge headache that I had with the dealer when I purchased my car was the temporary plates. And so when I bought my car, the temporary plates that I had lasted about a month. And so the way it works in my state is that the state will mail the permanent plates to the dealer. Okay, fine. But because there was a backlog with my state, by the time my temporary plates expired, I couldn't get the real plates weren't ready. So that was really frustrating. And then I called the dealer and I'm like, well, are you going to fix it? Like a week before the deadline. I'm like, hey, are you going to give me new plates? And then they were like, oh yeah, totally. And then like 1 day before, I'm like, hey, are the real plates in? Or are you going to make me new ones? And then they're like, the real plates aren't in. You figure out the templates. And I'm like, what? And so in my state, you are able to get new templates for yourself, temporary plates. You have to go to the tax office and some other nonsense. But that was already when my plates had expired, basically. And so I couldn't go, I couldn't go that same day to go get it done. And then of course, like it's not exactly like a fast process. It takes a while to get the new temporary plates with the tax office and everything. And so for 2 weeks, basically, because of work and other commitments, I couldn't drive the car that I spent thousands of dollars on. Eventually, I called the dealer back and forth, and finally someone was like, oh, okay, I'll work with you, I'll help you out. And then 2 weeks later, they mailed me the new temporary plates for the car, so I was able to drive it the last month, thankfully. So some people in the dealership office do care about the customers, but I guess the vast majority didn't, because it was multiple people that gave me the runaround on like, oh, you do it, or we don't do it, or it's too late, whatever. But you pay the fee in the contract for the license plates. All that to say, just agree ahead of time what's going to happen if you're in a situation where the real plates take longer than the temporary plates. A big mistake that I did was I didn't look at the dealer reviews. And so I bought a Kia car, and then when I expressed my frustrations to some of my friends, they were like, yeah, even amongst dealers, which are kind of all a little slimy, Kia had a better reputation for being even worse than those. And so I definitely faced a lot of those challenges with my dealership, and I wish I could just look at the reviews to see like which ones are actually treating their customers right, or which ones are making it more painless, and which ones are just kind of giving you headaches. Of course, some dealers do have an active presence on like Google reviews or whatever, and so it's a little bit harder because they'll respond to all of them and they'll say like, oh yeah, sorry you had a bad experience, we'll try to work with you, or thank you for leaving us the positive reviews. And then of course people can just buy reviews, so that doesn't help. But maybe by accessing things like Reddit or just asking people for their personal experience, I could have gotten a better sense on this. But I did do some things right. And so when you do buy a car, do figure out what your budget is. If you're going to take out a loan for the car, you do want a down payment for the vehicle. You are going to pay some amount monthly. And so just figure out all of this ahead of time. You don't want to be shopping for cars, you fall in love with the car, and then you're like, it's outside of budget. So figure out this ahead of time. That way you already know what is even possible when you go shopping for vehicles. And then of course there's always a pro tip that if you can buy a car less than your budget, do that. One of the things that helped me was just trying to find the car before I went to the dealer. And so these videos were very helpful. I wanted an electric car, so I was like, well, let's compare the electric cars. So I was like, what's the Model Y compared to the Kia EV6, or what's the Model 3 compared to this? So I ended up getting a Kia Niro, which I like, it's a good car. And I watched videos like this to see how it compared against these other vehicles. One of the things that sold me on the Kia Niro versus like the Kia EV6, which is a little bit pricier, was just like the roof, so when you sit in the car, I'm a tall person, the tall people were hitting their head on the roof, and that's something I didn't want. And so that was something that was helpful, again, watching videos like this or reading articles. And of course, test driving. Most dealers will let you test drive a car, and so that was also helpful to kind of get a sense of like, yeah, this is a better experience than the Leaf or whatever. Other things that you got to think about, particularly if you're going to get an electric car, is to budget in the infrastructure to make that happen. And so electric car chargers, they basically come in like two settings. You can get a level 1 charger for like $200. So that trickle charge that charges your electric car slowly. You can also get a level 2 charger, which charges your car much faster. So instead of taking like days to go from 0 to 100, it can take you just a couple hours to go from 0 to 100. But those cost a little bit more. So I was able to get one for like $400 to $500. But then on top of that, you have to install it, because electric cars need a lot of like amperage and voltage. So you have to get an electrician to kind of make sure the electrical system in your house and in your garage are set up to do that. This might mean adding new wires from your electrical box to your garage so that you have these high amperage currents available for the car. So I had to get all of this installed. And if you look online, you're going to find a range from like if the electrical box is right next to where you want to charge your car, then maybe it's super cheap, $500. But for me, it wasn't. And so I had to spend quite a bit more. And so I think the top end of what it could be is maybe like $3,000 if you have like a really awkwardly shaped house. I don't know, but just think about this. Think about some of these infrastructure costs you're gonna have to pay on top of the vehicle that you're gonna have to pay for yourself. And then of course, just make sure your car fits in your garage. Make sure you have a place for it. If you're gonna get an electric car, you live in an apartment, you know, think through these logistics. If you're gonna get like a huge big truck and you have a tiny garage, think about these logistics. Just make sure that the vehicle makes sense for you. Something else that I did well was I shopped for loan rates. And so if you go to the dealer, they're gonna have a financing office there. They're gonna give you some different loan rates, you know, so like 4 years, some percent, 5 years, some percent, whatever. And that's fine. And sometimes those are competitive, but sometimes they're not. And sometimes that's where they make their money. All this in mind, shop around for car loans. And so Capital One Auto Finance is a way. Credit unions are another great place. You can just go to like wherever you bank and just say, hey, do you do car loans? Can you give me pre-approval for whatever amount, whatever interest rate? And that way, at least when you walk into the car dealer, you can say, hey, I already have 4%, 2%, whatever from this other place. Can you beat it? Often they can. It depends. But you know, often they can. And at least you save a headache of them trying to fleece you on the interest rates as well. So that was something I did well. And so the dealer did give me a competitive interest rate, but they don't always. And so just plan ahead to make sure you make this a win ahead of time. Don't be afraid to walk away. And so, like I said, I walked into my dealer and the car I liked, but they had like a $3,000 surcharge for this VIP package. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to walk away. This is not going to be good. A big story here, but when I did that, at first they were like, sorry, this is mandatory for all our cars. And then wouldn't you know it, when I walked away, they're like, actually, I talked to the manager and now it's not mandatory. And it's like, again, don't be afraid to walk away, because usually when you do, you're going to get a better deal. Something else that we thought about, and something that I'm going to think about going forward, is just going direct. If you buy a Tesla, you know exactly what it costs. You know exactly what the interest rate will be. You know exactly what your rates are going to be. And you know, you can test drive the cars ahead of time, and you kind of know what you're going to get. Whereas if you go to the dealers, there's a lot of black boxes in different places. You know, especially when I couldn't drive my car for 2 weeks, I was thinking, man, I wish I would have gotten the Tesla, because at least I probably wouldn't have had all this headache and, you know, just avoid the trouble. But something you have to think about is that Tesla likes to change the prices on the cars pretty frequently. So in 2022, I think the Teslas were a little bit higher than what they ought to have been, and Tesla had like a big profit margin. But then once all these other car companies started making their own electric cars, like the Mustangs, like the Kias, like the Nissan Arias coming out later, Tesla was like, we better lower the prices so we can stay competitive. And so if you had bought a car in 2022, you probably would have, you know, been a little upset that like perhaps even a month later they're thousands of dollars cheaper. So navigate that, be cautious about that. I mean, I guess Tesla, every car company has their own shenanigans. Just be mindful that I guess you have to be smart about wherever you buy your car. And plan ahead, number 5, one of the things that I did investigate was just knowing the laws. And so when I was getting really upset with the dealer, I did investigate like how to file a complaint on a dealership. And so just be aware of what you can do and what you can't do, so that if something does become unpleasant, at least you have a recourse. One of the things that's in my state is that if you buy a car, you bought the car, and you can't exactly be like, 2 days later I want a refund. That's not exactly how it works, at least in my state. And so again, just be aware of what you can do and what you can't do legally. That was my video on buying a car with the dealer. Thank you for listening. Again, be careful out there. And I know that there's been a lot of videos that I promised and I haven't quite delivered. Again, just having a baby just really consumes a lot of time, but he's growing up nicely. We love him and I love spending time with him. And it makes time for the hobbies really limited. Even Digimon, card games, video games, they just have a lot less time for anything. So I apologize for that, but I will try to continue maintaining a presence on YouTube and continue making the videos, continuing my craft. So thank you guys for bearing with me. I hope you like the content. Like and subscribe if you like. Again, I'm not going to be these super popular YouTubers, but hopefully my information is helpful. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great day.